And then after I finish reading this, let us just meditate on the words for about a minute, and then I would love for you to just share your insights and awareness after we have our moment of silence. Okay. We have seen that the possible field of consciousness is limited by the sanskaras. This limitation creates a division of the human psyche into two parts. One part falls within the range of consciousness, and the other part falls beyond it. The unconscious part, in its full extent, is identical with the power that is behind matter. I'm going to read that sentence again. The unconscious part, in its full extent, is identical with the power that is behind matter. It is referred to as God by the Orthodox religions. The ultimate reality, which is symbolically represented through such concepts, can be known fully only by bringing the unconscious into consciousness. An extension of consciousness consists in being conscious of that which was formerly a part of the unconscious. The progressive conquest of the unconscious by the conscious culminates in consummate consciousness. We would love to hear anyone's thoughts on this quote, so please go ahead.
Anne?
Yes?
It occurs to me that the process, or maybe that's a question, is the process, in your opinion, of bringing the unconscious into consciousness part of what you're trying to do right today? In this, these are the skills or the methods, perhaps, that for the attempts to bring the unconscious into the conscious, or clearing up the obstructions for awareness, a deeper awareness.
Yes, I would say that's true. And I actually was amazed to read that Baba said what the Orthodox call religion is the unconscious, because I had forgotten that. And I like to think of the Jungian psychology as also a bridge to this understanding that the only way we can become conscious is by projecting our unconscious out into the world. And then in the work of Byron Katie, we take those projections and question them in order to withdraw the projection and then integrate it into our own awareness. So that is how the work, to me, is a wonderful way to integrate what Jungian psychology recognized as an important process in awakening. And then Baba has given it to us, you know, like 80 years ago in the discourses, that the unconscious becoming consciousness is what brings us to the consummate consciousness of God realization. Does anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to share? Okay. So we're going to do the work of Byron Katie on coronavirus today which is a wonderful, timely inquiry for us. And before we do that, I would love to share another perspective of coronavirus that that you might not have considered. I certainly hadn't. And I was listening to a conversation between an Ayurvedic practitioner and a microbiome specialist on the subject of coronavirus. And they were discussing that it means feminine crown from the Latin. And they were saying that perhaps the coronavirus is bringing the feminine into more balance on the planet, because of course we know that in this machine age, all of the overactivity of the masculine is in full sway, and so they were speculating that perhaps this enforced slowing down and staying at home could be a way to bring that feminine into balance. And of course, I immediately think of Maher, who is the epitome of the feminine, and Baba's really the crown of creation. And so I thought it was a nice way to put a positive spin on this pandemic right now, and just consider that before we do our inquiry, because we know that Baba says everything happens by the will of God, and it's all for the awakening. And so I'm noticing personally that I'm contemplating Maher a lot more now, and I'm remembering how she was so conscientious and thoughtful of every small detail in the work that she did for Baba, whether it was, you know, tending to his form, his, you know, combing his hair and saving his nails and fixing his food with such love and care. And to me, that is the epitome of the feminine. And I also wanted to bring up, if you are not aware of Jonathan Burrow's fine book on Myrtle Beach as Baba's home in the West, I read that book and I was so appreciative of his focus on home and how important that was to Baba. You know, Marizad was the home in his home in the East, and Myrtle Beach his home in the West, and what that means for each of us to really ensoul our homes as this sacred place where we spend a lot of time, even, you know, when the coronavirus isn't limiting us to home. And so those are just a few thoughts that I wanted to share before we go into our inquiry. And I would love it if anybody has any thoughts that they would like to add to that.
I like the idea of, Anne, that you're bringing out, that Baba does everything. Everything is expression of his love. So to, you know, make an attempt to look at maybe what's underneath what he's doing, you know, and to look at those eyes, I think shapes our reality and how we view what comes into our awareness.
Yeah. I just experienced this as it's more yin, it's a slowing down and being very inwardly contemplative of the creator. You know, we are God's creation, and Maher is the perfect example of that utter consecration to living every minute of our life for Baba. And so I just found that it was a really nice meditation for me in my home to really put my focus there and appreciate that this civilization that we live in, which is so fast-paced, is being slowed down, whether it wants to or not. Okay, so if anybody else would like to share anything before we go into our inquiry today.
You know,
Okay.
yeah, well, okay, it's Paula.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, on that, you know, this was easier for me when I was younger and raising my children, but in I don't know how ancient times, but in maybe it was the last golden age, but the role of women was everything they did for God. If it was taking care of their children, their husbands, whatever they did, their focus was on God. And I think that's available to us, and it needs to be available to us. And Maher is the supreme example of that. But no matter where we are or who we live with, who we take care of or don't, even if it's just ourselves, that it's serving Baba in whoever it is that we care for and love. And that's kind of where it's really wonderful. When I was younger and I was raising my children, it was easier then for some reason. It's harder now that I'm so much older, but it was really wonderful because the gift Baba gave me was I felt like he was in my house, and I felt like Maher was in my house. And when I loved my husband and I loved my children, I was loving him. So maybe he's helping us get closer to that awareness. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, thank you so much for sharing that. And I do feel that whatever we do when we're remembering him, it is like being with him and coming closer. So does anyone else have anything they'd like to say? Okay, so we talked a little bit last week about the 4 questions of the work of Byron Katie, and you know, it is very helpful if you go to her website, thework.com, and just read her little book so that you have an awareness of what that is. So, and because we're not going to go over that again, but what we're going to work on today is that the stressful universal belief is going to be coronavirus endangers me. Okay, that's what we're going to just explore today, and notice where, if you can find where that could be true for you, that you're believing that on some level, that the coronavirus endangers me. Okay, can everybody find that belief?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel that it's a pretty universal belief, and last week somebody asked me if Katie has done the work on the coronavirus, and I hadn't found it on her website. And so, but what I did say is that I know what she would say about it, because she says the same thing about everything, and that's what we learn. We learn a new way of being with our stressful thoughts, because they happen all the time. And the key is for us to learn to disidentify from the stressful thoughts and notice that, as Baba says, life is continually bringing us challenges, and it's the way that we respond to them that makes life beautiful. And we can find a way to have equanimity throughout the most disturbing situations in our life. And you know, Katie is often known to have said, the worst things that happen to us become the best things. And I have found that to be true. The greatest sufferings of my life have been my greatest opportunities for growth and coming closer to him. So we're going to start now, and all the microphones should be unmuted, because this is a group inquiry, and for the first 2 questions it's just a yes or a no, and everybody needs to just find their own answer, and you can't do it wrong. And then when we get to question 3, Diantha is going to post a sheet that gives possible sub-questions to help you find your answers in question 3. Because in my experience, it's easy to go into a story when we get to that question. And so just notice some of the sub-questions that I will read off, and then you can explore that in order to discover how you react when you believe the thought. Okay, so I'm going to give the statement, coronavirus endangers me. Question 1, is that true? Is that true that the coronavirus endangers me? So sit with that, and when you find your answer, just give a yes or a no.
Say yes.
I don't know.
So an I don't know is then a no. I mean, that's how the work works.
I think yes.
Yeah.
I think yes.
Yes. I could find a yes there.
Mm-hmm.
Coronavirus endangers me, and I bet I could give a lot of reasons why. So if everybody's found their answer for question 1, if you said yes, then we go on to question 2. And if you said no, then you can just wait till we go to question 3. So question 2 is, can you absolutely know that it's true that coronavirus endangers you? Can you absolutely know that that's true?
No.
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 I think yes.
No. And remember, if your answer is I don't know for sure, then it's no, I can't absolutely know for sure that it endangers me. And I always like to invite the client to just spend at least a full minute in this to allow the inner wisdom to arise, which is the voice of the heart, the voice of intuition, and Baba's voice in us. That's the voice that we are listening for, because the outer mind will come quickly with an answer. Okay, so is everyone ready? Have you found your answer for question 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to go on to question 3. How do you react? What happens when you believe the thought that the coronavirus endangers you? How do you react? So Diantha, if you can post that file, the question 3 with sub-questions. Okay, so look at this first sub-question. What emotions do you feel when you're believing the thought that the coronavirus endangers you? What emotions arise? And let me hear you, let's say this all out into the group because we're doing this together.
Fear.
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 Yes,
Mhm.
I feel fear. When I'm believing the thought that it endangers me, I'm definitely feeling fear. Anybody else have an emotion?
Frustration.
Okay, good. Yeah. So when you found those emotions, then go look at the next sub-question. Where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel the fear? And everybody just speak it out.
Chest.
Yeah, I
Chest.
definitely
Yeah,
feel
my
it in my
chest.
heart.
Chest, yeah.
So now everybody find that where you feel it in your body and get really still, because the body is a really important instrument for us to recognize and give us information. And oftentimes we've repressed and suppressed feeling those uncomfortable feelings and sensations because we don't know what to do with them. And so what we're going to do with them, which helps us bring the unconscious into consciousness is to go into the mode of the witness, the objective observer. Because as we know with Baba, we're not our body, we're not our emotions or our thoughts. We are actually the soul who is aloof from all of that. And if we can actually go in and feel the uncomfortable feelings for 60 to 90 seconds, neuroscientists have discovered that something will shift. And so it takes courage to stay with these stressful emotions and sensations, but we're going to do it together for 60 to 90 seconds. And then I'm going to ask you to report to me any shift that you notice. So first of all, I'd like to hear people just describe the sensations. Like I notice in my heart, there's a contraction and a shaking when I'm believing the thought that the coronavirus endangers me. Does anybody else have a sensation that they notice that they would be willing to share?
It's like a heat in the chest and stomach.
Okay, great.
Shortness of breath, a shallower breathing.
Yes, and that is so really almost always a part of our stressful thoughts. We immediately don't breathe. And so when we go into this for 60 to 90 seconds, I want you to actually try to gently remember gentle breath while you go into the uncomfortable sensation and emotion. Okay. So we're going to do that now. And then I will ask you after a minute or so to just report what you noticed. Some shift will happen.
You're just talking about trying to feel the feelings, focus on
You're going to actually go into that feeling of fear, into that sensation that the fear shows up for you in your body. That's what we're going to do now. And we're going to be in the witness mode. We're not going to identify with it. We're going to be like a curious scientific researcher, okay? Because we know something's going to change. And so we're going to be interested to notice that. And this is helping us disidentify from those uncomfortable feelings and sensations. All right. And just breathe gently. So when you're ready, just share with the group what you notice when you observe in the witness mode those uncomfortable sensations. Describe what you notice.
Well, I noticed, Anne, that I had anger, like the way they treated the world and they, whoever they is, and and how it's rebelling and how, you know, things are out of balance. And I felt anger at the way the world was treated. But then when I sat with it for a while, compassion welled up for the people who just don't know, and the earth. You know, people aren't intentionally going to; they're just out of ignorance.
Yes.
That was very interesting.
What was the original emotion that was before the anger?
It was frustration, and then I realized there's anger there too that was hot on the
Yes.
top of my head.
Yes, yes. And frustration and irritation are aspects of anger. Baba says that anger is the fume of an irritated mind.
Yes.
And so you were able to go underneath the frustration and find that deeper level, and then it actually transformed into compassion. And that is really often the case when we can get in touch with these uncomfortable emotions and sensations. Does anyone else have something they would like to share?
I feel the same.
You feel just the same?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would invite you to do, Tina, is this is also a practice, an exercise that helps us really hone the disciplined thinking. And so I invite you to keep doing it and noticing when your mind goes astray from this intense penetration into the core sensation that you're feeling. What was the feeling, what was the emotion and sensation that you were feeling?
Just fear, panic.
Fear. And where did you feel that fear?
In the stomach and the chest.
In the chest. So when we do this again sometime, practice just 100% penetrating into that fear with your mind. You know, Baba tells us that it's really important for us to learn to get control over the mind. And this is one of the ways we do it, is by focusing a sharp attention into that quality, whether it's negative, and of course positive ones are good, but we can usually just enjoy those. But when it is fear and it's in the heart, I think you will find, if you just stick with it for a while, that there's something underneath that. And it's kinder and it's more stable. So at the core of our being is only love, because that's who we are in reality. So anyway, that's my invitation to you, is to just stick with it. Is there anyone else who has something to share?
Well, I felt it in the tension, the fear in my solar plexus stomach. And when I focused on it, I just felt it relaxing. I didn't go into emotion. I went into that area of the body, and I just felt relaxation when I did that.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, because that is usually what happens. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years, and when you can go into that uncomfortable feeling, like you did, Jackie, in the solar plexus, and you just honor it, because it actually has wisdom in there. And when we're able to go into that uncomfortable feeling, generally it relaxes. And oftentimes it will shift to another area of the body that needs attention also. So good. Anyone else want to share?
I felt grateful. I mean, I definitely feel it. I feel the anger. I feel the fear. And I've been dealing with this and focusing on it besides doing it now. And I guess I've been, in my own way, doing the work on it, because I feel that I'm in a very low area. So right now, I'm reminded of, you know, New York, and where my sister lives, there's, hundreds of thousands of cases and 800 people dying a day. And, you know, and
Yes.
it's really acute situation. So I have a hard time not going to that. I didn't instead of staying on, processing my own fear about it. I went to the grateful part. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
not focusing I'm supposed to be, but that's what was
Well,
happening.
what are you grateful for? Did you notice what you were feeling grateful for? Okay, so you're frozen for me. I don't know if you're talking or not.
Too.
Cliff, you're kind of coming in and out.
Okay.
Why don't we come back to him?
Yeah. So Cliff mentioned his situation is really very challenging because he has family in New York, but he did go to a feeling of being grateful, and I'm interested to hear what shifted where he was able to go to that. And in my experience, when we can find those loving and beautiful emotions, I do believe that helps more than anything, the love and the care and the compassion and the gratitude for what we can be grateful for can make a huge difference. Okay. So does anyone else have anything they'd like to share before we go to the next sub-question? Because I'd like to really take our time and explore this most important inquiry.
Hi,
So, hi.
Hi. Sorry, I was hiding because late lunch. But I also felt like Anne did, the anger in my throat, in the throat area.
Yes.
And it felt like I wanted to scream at it and make it go away
Yes.
so that we could get back to normal. And focusing on it made me want to just shout it out with my voice and just repel it. It was transforming into unrealized intention. And I want to, I want to be a part of the solution. And what is it that I can do to allay people's fears, give them comfort, like you are doing, but we each have our gift. I don't know, kind of that's where I'm at. I mean, I do feel grateful every day. Every day I feel very grateful.
Yes.
I had a 24-hour bout of digestive, intestinal issue, and I concocted this imagination that COVID got into my tummy.
Yes.
And it was it was nothing like that. The doctor said, no, that's not true. If the anti-nausea medicine works, you have nothing like that. Anyway,
Yes.
so after that, my fear completely left me, and I had much more confidence that if I do what I'm being told, it's going to be okay. And then I shifted that into gratefulness and desire to help and frustration for the inability to help others.
And I would question that thought. I would question the thought that that there is an inability to help, because in my experience, when you are willing to sit in that thought and then feel compassion and gratitude, I know that that's really how we do help shift everything. And also I noticed that you beautifully segued into question 4, who you would be without the thought. And you said you're someone who, you know, wants to find ways to help. And so question 4 is where we do find proactive solutions. And, you know, that's alive in you. And I wouldn't be surprised if other inspiration arises in ways that are just unique to you as to how you are helping and how you can help. And so, you know, the work is also can be very active, and the key is to do whatever service we do without the anger. I'm curious though, you mentioned the anger, you felt it in your throat. Did I hear that right? Did you
Yes.
notice that that relaxed when you put your attention on it?
It transformed into the desire to shout it out, like to get it out, you know, so
Okay.
you know, that's why I was like, I'm speaking now, because I was going to hide through the whole
Okay.
meeting, but it's like it wants to express.
Okay, great.
It
Thank
wants
you.
to release that way, you know, through, I don't know how else. I have never done this work, so this is new to me.
Right. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. So there's another sub-question here that we can look at, and it's where and at what age did that thought first occur to you, in this case, that something or someone is endangering me? And in this situation, just trust if an image arises. Oftentimes an image or a memory will arise when you remember your earliest thought of something or someone is endangering me. It's dangerous to me. And just speak up if you have a memory or an image arise.
I remember.
Okay. Tell what it is.
Is my voice clear?
Well,
My voice?
you know, it's not very loud for me, but I can hear you.
How is this? Is it better if I project?
I can hear
Yeah,
you.
I think I'm going to have to get some earbuds or something here next time.
I'll tell you the story very quickly. I'm about 10 years old.
Yeah.
My father has a drugstore in Manhattan, and I went on a delivery. About a block into the delivery, on the other side of the street were 15, 16-year-old guys with black jackets, studded silver, knives, chains, and sticks in their hand. And I got very frightened because I knew they were going to go into a rumble. This is around 1958.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, one of these kids ran across the street 20 feet in front of me with his hand straight out. And as I saw him run with a little glass bottle with a cherry bomb lit in it, and this kid in this gang from across the street saw that little infant that I just mentioned now, right going toward the mailbox with the glass, with the cherry bomb inside. And this kid scooped this kid up with his hand. And a second later, the bottles broke into 100 pieces. When I saw that happen, in the twinkle of an eye, within 7 seconds, I said, those kids scared me to death, but the spirit of humanity, of love, of Baba was going through, I'm sure all of them, but this one kid said, I cannot let that little infant get blown up with the glass. And I got very frightened when I saw that. And after it was done, it renewed my faith in humanity and in kids. And interestingly enough, I devoted my life to becoming a high school counselor, working with those kids 15 years later. And I knew they were great kids.
Beautiful.
But I was scared, very scared,
Yeah.
because I thought they were going to attack me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So oftentimes when an image arises for us, an early memory, now this one actually became very positive for Jeff, and but the image arose so that he could share this story with us of how the fear turned into his life's service, his outer life service. For someone else, it might be a memory that is not resolved yet. And so oftentimes what we fear in the current day, like right now, coronavirus, it's actually triggering a fear that's still inside us from our childhood. And of course, we know it could be from past lives, but oftentimes it's from an experience that we really couldn't process as children. Does anybody else have a memory or image that arose the first time you remember feeling endangered by someone or something?
I do.
Okay, could you share it?
Yeah, my name's Tina. I pretty much felt endangered my whole childhood from my father. He was a very explosive, abusive guy.
Yes.
So I was,
Did a particular image arise, a particular memory?
no, it was just a general feeling of being unsafe because I never knew what he was going to
Yes. Yes. And so what we do in the work, oftentimes when a client has had a really difficult childhood, I don't know if you're familiar with inner child work, but we go back inside to a particular age, and then you can do this right now. You can tell that part of yourself who's still maybe 7 years old and who's really afraid because your dad just, scared you. You go in there and say, you know what? I'm the parent you've been waiting for, and I am here for you 24/7. And that helps you reintegrate those elements from your childhood that you had absolutely no control over. A child cannot tell a parent to stop generally. I mean, it doesn't work. And so we carry these fears over into our adult life, and it's like we're still on guard because of those experiences of childhood. And so you actually have to go in and tell that part of yourself, it's like a fragmented part, you're okay now because I'm here for you. And then also a part of that work is to slowly do the work for, in your situation, on your father, where you actually learn to just forgive him and recognize that as poor of a job that he did as a parent, he did the best he knew how. Because when we look at the ancestral lineage of the way we're raised by our parents, the story always goes back to how they were raised. It's like these become automated responses, and it's really never personal. And so what Byron Katie always invites us to do is become the parent that we've been waiting for.
Wow.
We're the parent we've been waiting for. And of course, we're so fortunate that we have Baba as our father. He's our everything. But we can heal the past through forgiveness and recognizing that this is a dream and it's all for our awakening. So whatever we've been given in this life, it's exactly what we needed in order to wake up from the dream.
And what do you mean by when you say it's just a dream?
Well, because Baba tells us this is a dream that we're waking up from. Baba says, and so does the work, the mind projects the world, and what we have to do is get the dust off the lens of the projector of the mind. And then we come to find out that this world is just a movie. It's a movie that we've created through our imagination, which, believe me, I don't experience that awareness, but I do have the intellectual awareness of it, and it does help me feel a sense of a more impersonal experience with this life, that it's all here for me to wake up.
What's helped me?
And what?
What's helped me recently, I thought about this. It's a dream of thoughts.
Yes.
And as you said, these thoughts, a lot of them are projections through the filter of that projector on the screen, it's somewhat intellectual, but it's a dream of thoughts that have nothing to do with reality in a lot of cases.
Well, it's in all cases. Reality is beyond thought. I think Baba uses thought, the mind of God, but he's beyond thought. And of course, he knows all the thoughts that get circulated around. And the reason that I love doing the work of Byron Katie and sharing it is because it actually does help me come closer to Baba and recognize that this world really is a dream that I'm waking up from. And I also notice that the dream, gets lighter and sweeter, and I'm able to really feel more compassion and caring because I am questioning my stressful thoughts. And so there is a sweetness that comes from letting go of these thoughts. And one of the big awarenesses that the work gave me is that when we're believing our stressful thoughts, we're also believing that we're a victim. And victimhood is a really important awareness so that we cannot identify ourselves as victims anymore. Baba says if God realization were easy, it wouldn't be worth it. And so it's not easy. It's really hard, but it's the only game worth playing. And so when we notice that we feel like victims of anything, we need to question it. Because in reality, we're not victims. We only make ourselves victims of our own stressful thoughts.
Does Byron Katie have some kind of, not shortcut, but when something is happening with thoughts that causes a reaction, I'm beginning to learn that most thoughts are non-personal, and yet we think that these thoughts are personally attacking us, maybe from another person, such as a parent that's abusive or 1,000 other things. How do you, in the moment, if there is a way that you do this, disidentify from the thoughts, even though there is a emotional thought, feeling, but it's not true, because that a lot of these thoughts have nothing to do with you or reality. But is there a way that you can disidentify without getting caught in the emotion?
Well, it's like anything that's of value. It takes effort and discipline. And so what I did was I immersed myself in studying the work and questioning my stressful thoughts. And over time and practice and patience, things really shifted. And I noticed that nobody out there had to change. It was just me. And it's not without anguish and tears. I mean, the shadow self, our unconscious, is so afraid of coming into the light. And so we tend to blame and focus outside of ourselves. It's always easier to blame something else. But in reality, if we really want to become completely free, we have to take responsibility for all of our thoughts. And actually, no thought is personal. And I noticed that the more that I stay in self-inquiry, it's easier to live in a different place where I know that no thought is true and that everything is happening, as Baba says, for our awakening. And when we can have equanimity, whether we're having it's enjoyable or it's unpleasant, that's the key. We learn to have a certain equanimity between the enjoyment of life and the challenges of life, because Baba tells us that he can help us, but he doesn't take away our challenges. But he can certainly help us come to that place where they don't rock our world either way. And that I think that becomes the way through to a deeper level of living intuitively with Baba through our hearts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Would anyone else like to share anything before we go on?
One of the things that comes to my mind is what Baba said about saying and realizing and really believing that whatever it is that is happening is because Baba wants it to be that way. And
Yes.
if it's in the divine order that he has already sort of, I would say maybe not scripted, but outlined collectively and individually, then why would I doubt that? You know, why would I resist that? It's like whatever, as you said so astutely earlier, whatever it is for his script for us, for our awakening. And sometimes the birth canal gets kind of rough, but you know, the rebirthing into this new world that we are hoping that will manifest. We know it is coming, but we are not so sure we're ready for it. Personally, I'm like, dude, really? Baba's manifesting already? I mean, he's been slowly manifesting, but you know, it's becoming a little more palpable with this crisis. And I am actually really grateful that he's giving us an opportunity to assimilate this quickening, assimilate it, and not have some major calamity on top of us that we will not be able to handle. You know, so I'm just feeling like he is giving us the rope to slowly, you know.
Well, that's nice, but it is a calamity. And I'm in the epicenter of the calamity, and it feels pretty damn scary.
So Tina, I would invite you to notice who is speaking. If Baba says we are the soul, and the soul is aloof from this physical experience, it's always the ego that is afraid and angry, and our work is to learn to disidentify from that part of ourself and spend more time communing with that part of us that feels the love that Baba gives us.
I don't feel it. I don't feel it at all. I'm just in a constant state of terror.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I invite you to take Baba's name internally, because I've noticed when I'm afraid, if I literally take his name for a long time, I cannot be afraid. So I would just invite you to try that.
I feel like Baba abandoned me, actually. I don't. It's just not working for me.
Okay, it's a choice, you know, it really is. And I respect that. So,
I mean, I have friends just like getting sick one after another after another. It's very, very scary.
Yeah, the dream, it's a nightmare. And that's why, you know, the nightmare is here for us to wake up and find out that nothing has ever happened, Baba says, and nothing ever will happen. That's reality. And we need to recalibrate ourselves from believing in the dream and feeding the dream into honoring Baba's reality, which is pure love. And it's, you know, that's our work. And that's, you know, what I found so helpful in the work of Byron Katie. When I was seriously suffering in 2008 and I didn't even want to live anymore, that's when I feel Baba gave me the work as a bridge to him. And And I truly have experienced that the worst thing that happened to me became the best thing, because it did make me hang on even harder to his Daman. And that's the remedy for all of
I'm
us.
just in the middle of it, you know, and
It's okay. I hear your story, and you can stick to that story. And if you want to find a kinder story, Baba tells us how to do that. Take his name and hang on with both hands to his Daman until you can find that place in your heart where you are absolutely one with our beloved. And that's the invitation. And, you know, so we're going to move on to the next.
Hey, Anne, I just wanted to
Yes.
say one thing, just quickly,
Yeah.
that because you're, Tina, you're in the middle of it, and you are in probably the worst place in the world right now with it. It's important, I find, you know, when I'm really suffering, that I find baby steps, you know, all the little things that are good, you know, and try to add them up. You know, you don't have the virus, and
I don't have
you know,
the virus,
you
and I
have
have
this.
not been out in over a month.
I know, but I'm just saying, you know, you have the internet, you have us, you have Baba, and what Anne is saying, you know, it's an opportunity. I don't want to interrupt the flow here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Cliff. And I know that you have a lot of empathy for Tina, because you are also suffering with your loved ones being in New York. And I have full respect for that. And I do. And I also know that, you know, it's important for us to hang on to Baba with both hands when we're really suffering. And so we're going to move on to the next sub-question, which is, how do you treat coronavirus in this case when you're believing the thought that it's endangering you? How do you treat coronavirus when you're believing that thought? So just sit in that for a moment, and then you know, share what you discover. How are you treating it? Would anyone like to share what they found?
Yes, I put Baba's love around it. I wrapped it in Baba's love.
Thank you. So we only take stressful thoughts to inquiry. So notice how you're treating the coronavirus when you're actually believing that it's endangering you. And you've already moved on to who you are without the thought. But for the rest of us, let's find how are we treating the coronavirus when we're actually believing that it's endangering us?
I am with my wife, Rachel, here in Amherst, Massachusetts, with great cautious awareness, whether we occasionally go into a store to buy food or the local senior center in Hadley comes once a week and they deliver food, which interestingly give us a pair of rubber gloves and we wipe down.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right now, Jeff, because in the work, the role of the facilitator is to keep you from going into story. And so notice how you treat it. I heard you say you treat it with caution.
Yes.
That's how you treat coronavirus, with caution.
Yes.
So I'm just sharing how the work works for all of us. So try to notice that your answers are succinct, and notice when you're going into the story, because the work is about not going into the story. So I notice when I'm believing coronavirus endangers me, I treat it like it's an enemy. I treat it like it's the enemy. So anyone else have anything to share about how they treat coronavirus when they're believing that it's endangering them?
I keep it as far away from me as I can.
Okay, yeah, so you kind of like distance yourself from it.
Right.
Good. Who else? Who else can share how they treat it? This is really an interesting question.
With impatience and irritation.
Thank you.
I would say I treat it with hypervigilance.
Thank you. Excellent to notice. Hypervigilance. Yes. So this next question is very challenging, and I invite you to just sit in it for a minute or so. It's very difficult to answer the question, how do you treat yourself when you're believing that the coronavirus is endangering you? How do you treat yourself when you're believing that thought? Just ponder that for a moment, and then I would love to hear what you find.
I think I'm very self-protective.
Okay.
I don't get my mail. I don't, it's just, I don't go to the laundry room. I don't do any of
So you're
that.
self-protective. Yes. Anyone else?
I think I'm like ambivalent. I go back and forth between talking myself into believing it could happen to me and mine, and then handing that over to Baba, thinking, well, if it happens, it'll be for the good ultimately. And then sometimes I go back into the horror of the thought of how horrible it sounds like it can be. So I'm kind of back and forth with it.
And thank you, Robin. And I have a comment on what Robin said. So she goes into the horror of it, and then she gives it over to Baba, and so as you deepen into self-inquiry, you will catch yourself like immediately when you. This is why Baba says imagination is what creates the world, and it uncreates through letting go of imagination. We actually create the horrors in our mind. And so it's very important, again, to discipline the mind to pull back from creating the horror story and just giving it to Baba like instantly, and finding proactive solutions, which is what we do in question 4. So does anybody else notice how do you treat yourself when you're believing the thought that coronavirus is endangering you?
I shut down from my normal world. I retreat.
Okay, yes. And so just notice that. And what comes up for me in hearing that is that retreat, can also be turned into a positive experience. Like when you retreat, maybe just take time to do an internal inventory and notice, for instance, those sensations. What am I feeling right now? Am I feeling constricted? Is there fear there? And just be with it. If you just can be with those stressful feelings and actually give them some attention, they do shift. And then a whole new awareness arises that can really support us in our journey home to being with Baba more. Anybody else have a comment on how you treat yourself?
I think I'm taking care of myself a lot better than I did before. So maybe care for myself, walking, going to the beach, things like that.
So that's a great awareness, and that's really question 4, who you are without the thought. So just notice that how you treat yourself when you're believing the thought that coronavirus endangers you. And this is just a nuance that's going to support you in getting a lot of clarity and motion in being able to internalize these questions, and you've already gone beyond question 3, how you react, and that's great. But just notice that's not how you treat yourself when you're believing that coronavirus is endangering you. Okay, so we're about ready to move on to question 4, but I'm going to ask you one more sub-question, which is at the bottom of the list. What do you fail to see when you're believing the thought that coronavirus is endangering you? What do you fail to see when you're believing that thought?
I fail.
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody. Well, it's like losing my focus on Baba.
Thank you.
And I can say,
I keep saying, maybe I need to raise my hand or something. Sorry.
Oh,
Go
no
ahead.
problem.
Oh.
Go ahead, Anne.
Oh, okay. I fail to see the connections with other people. I've retreated and I don't feel those connections so much.
Thank you. Thank you for
yeah,
that.
I can,
Yeah, Jackie. Yeah.
I can say when I'm in the store out and about, and I'm fortunate that I live in paradise, so I've been having a good time for the most part. But when I go to the store or have to go out, I'm not seeing people as people. I'm seeing them as potential coronavirus threat.
Wow,
Right.
thank you. Amazing. Isn't that, we objectify people when we're failing, that's what we fail to see when we're believing the thought that coronavirus is endangering us. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful awarenesses. So now we're going to move on to, now I would like to ask Diantha, if you just put that screenshot up for another minute. I just want to invite anyone who would like to take a picture of it, because that's my own list of sub-questions that Katie has used over the years, but they're not available anymore. But I find them to be very valuable. So if you want to take a picture of it, great. And otherwise, you can email me if you want me to send you the Word document. But this will really support you in thoroughly examining how you react when you're believing that thought. Okay, and I love the last question, the last sub-question, what are you unable to do when you believe that thought? Because I find that it's a really great segue into question 4, especially when you're having a hard time with question 4, which is, who would you be without that thought that coronavirus is endangering you? Who are you without that thought? And then, of course, like some of the people said here, oh, without the thought, I noticed that I was objectifying people, and that, that's not the problem. And so let's entertain question 4 right now. And I would love for you to all share what you notice, who you are without the thought that coronavirus is endangering you. I can definitely say for me that without that thought, I'm really appreciating how the coronavirus has helped me focus more internally, and especially in the sense of what I was sharing earlier about Maher, and feeling that absolute love and the attention to detail that she always represents in Baba's home. And I'm noticing my desire to put more attention on details that I generally overlook. And I'm finding that it's a beautiful way to feel Mara and Baba more. Who else? Who are you without the thought that coronavirus is endangering you?
Well, I can embrace the many gifts that I am receiving. I'm not living in the epicenter. I'm on a beautiful private nature preserve in a beautiful home, and I'm taking very good care of myself. I started daily prayer groups, and I'm getting to do things like this. I'm staying home in a way that's been a real treat, a real gift. I'm taking long walks in this gorgeous springtime. So without that thought, which only comes up when I have to go to the store once in a week and a half or something, or have to go to the post office or the bank or whatever, I'm in a great space. I know life is good.
So much. Thank you.
I like it slowing down and unplugging and resetting.
Yeah, yeah. Who else would like to share?
I find that I can spend time, like I go out for a walk in the morning, that I can at times just be in the present moment fully. And it's like Baba's really taking the walk. And the more moments I can have like that, the stronger that sense of Baba as my constant companion can grow. I can't seem to hold on to it very well, but it's the more of those I get, the better I feel.
Oh, thank you, Robin. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I realize I have more choice. That surprised me. That fear limits my choice, so I'm kind of stuck in this one. But if I don't have attached to the fear, more choices are available.
Oh, I love that you say that. It's almost like entering another world that is so vast,
Yeah.
A world that's much more intimate and personal. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I noticed that with my sisters, we're sending pictures and we're sharing stories that are so sweet, and it might not be happening if we weren't all at home. And it just really makes my heart just really feel tender to slow down and be, just be in that much more of a simplicity state that for me, Mara exemplifies, the depth of her attention and oneness with Baba is incomprehensible. What she has given us as an example of that perfect love and perfect focus. And I just really want to honor Mara on this day when we work on coronavirus. If it is the female crown, she's certainly the crown of creation, and Baba's beloved. I feel her spirit so strongly as we all stay close to home and deepen our connection with our beloved. So let's move on to the turnarounds. So we're going to turn it around to ourself. Now, when we're working on an object, like the coronavirus, we don't say, whereas if it was a person, we would say, I'm endangering me. But what we say in this one is, my thinking about coronavirus endangers me, okay? So I want us all to find a specific, authentic example of how my thinking about coronavirus endangers me.
I don't quite understand that, because coronavirus does kill people.
Well, in ultimate reality, I would question that thought. I would like to invite you, if you know about the God-intoxicated muss that Maher Baba came for in his advent, they could live in the most intense squalor and filth, and they maintained perfect health because they had that perfect love for God. And I know that we believe coronavirus kills us. We believe a lot of things kill us. But I like to remember the mus as this example of how we are not the body. And I truly believe that our thoughts about our body are very powerful. So my thinking about coronavirus endangers me. Anybody have an example that they would be able to share?
I saw a video about a man who, through breathing exercises and different things that he does, he's able to be almost like a must. He can be in absolute freezing cold and climb a mountain in the cold with just shorts on. And he's teaching other people to do it and having scientists measure and corroborate that he can do all that. And it came out of grief. It's really an interesting story about the Iceman.
That's like Christian Science.
Well, I mean, you know, Christian Science definitely has mind over matter. But what comes to me, Robin, thank you for sharing that. But what also comes to me is Baba talks about the yogis who could do all these seemingly miraculous feats. But it's the love for God that is really what brings us to oneness with him. And I remember him talking about how yogis could stand on one foot for 100 years, but you know, he talked about his own mandali being way greater than that because of their love for Baba. So what's another example for thinking about coronavirus endangers me?
Well, I think if I believe it can't, that it's going to help me not get it. But I don't know where my beliefs are really. You know, I mean, I can pretend that I believe that to my core, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, well, and of course, in question 4, the proactive solutions, without the thought that coronavirus endangers me, we notice that we can wear face masks and we can wash our hands a lot and we can do all these proactive measures. It doesn't mean we're not being practical, but that's a whole different story from revolving constant fearful thoughts about the coronavirus. So it's my thinking about coronavirus that endangers me. I remember when I was flying home from Myrtle Beach, you know, 3 weeks ago, and the airports were practically empty, but I needed to get home here to Montana. And I watched my mind, I watched my thoughts as I was walking through the Atlanta airport, and there was huge numbers of people going to South Korea and huge numbers of people going to Mexico. And other than that, everything was pretty empty. And I noticed that if I picked up on, I believe I was picking up on thought forms from people who were afraid. And I noticed if I tied into that, then I would feel fear. But I noticed if I stayed in my own business, which is, Baba says our business is to love him. And so when I was remembering to stay in my own business and loving him, it was like having that mosquito net over me that he talks about, not only keeping the mosquitoes out, but the coronavirus. And so, you know, my thinking about coronavirus endangered me when I picked up and entertained the thought forms of people in the airport. Does anybody else have an example of how my thinking about coronavirus endangers me?
Well, for one, fear, anxiety, and stress do tend to lower the immune system. So we are doing ourselves disservice, really, by succumbing.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
That's
Anybody
why
else
just love the Zoom options right now for tapping and Feldenkrais and yoga. Oh my God, wow. I do all of them as much as I can because it does support me. It supports me in radiating and embodying what Baba wants me to radiate and embody, which is his love. And he did say nothing, there is nothing And if we believe that he's the avatar and what he says is true, there is
Yes.
nothing that love cannot conquer.
Yes, and thank you so much for saying that. And I would like to just say here that with stressful thoughts, coronavirus endangers me. We can get the coronavirus and we can die. That's the worst case scenario. And without the stressful thought that coronavirus endangers me, we could still get coronavirus and die. And, you know, we just pick up a new body and keep going on. So we're not so much doing the work to not get coronavirus. We're doing the work so that we have equanimity no matter what happens to us. We could die or we could not die. But if we die with fearful thoughts, you know, it's harder to go and be with Baba. If we die with Baba's name on our lips, we can have that blissful experience. So it's not about getting rid of it. It's about how we respond to the challenge. It reminds me of that Zen saying, before enlightenment, we chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, we chop wood and carry water. So the goal is like not whether or not we get it, because it's our attitude that's going to make all the difference. So we're going to move on to the turnaround to the other, which is going to be really interesting. I endanger coronavirus. My thinking endangers coronavirus. Does anybody have an example to share for that turnaround?
I have an image for that a friend of mine gave me that used to do body work. But when something like this comes along, and a lot of times I forget to do it, but it's like, I look at this thing and it looks kind of like a sea urchin, you know, I kind of look at it sometimes and try to see beauty in it. But anyway, it's like you take it in your hand, and I see Baba and I throw it to Baba. And then Baba looks at it and he takes it and he throws it to Upasani Maharaj. And Upasani Maharaj eats it and it explodes inside of him and turns into love.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. I love that.
Or what?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I
Does
also
anybody else have an example from my thinking about coronavirus endangers it? Well, I'm looking at the time. Go ahead.
Well, I'm doing prayer groups and a lot of praying. So I'm just sending out lots of light and love to the whole situation.
Yeah.
So I guess you could call that endangering it.
Well, or transforming
life,
through love, you know.
life, transforming it, yeah.
I mean, I like to think if the coronavirus on some mystical level represents a female crown, then maybe we're helping the feminine to manifest on this planet more, which would be a wonderful thing for all of us to have that balance, masculine and feminine come into balance, which is, of course, what happens when we realize God. We have that mystical marriage within our heart. So let's move on to the turnaround. Oh, go ahead, Diantha.
I don't know when to say this, and it might sound a little crazy, but something that I've been doing is, thinking about death differently. And I think losing someone I love would be harder than actually losing my own life. But as far as coming to terms with losing my own life, I'm thinking a lot about my last breath, and I'm thinking about drowning in the ocean of Maher Baba's love, and how, if that happens, and when that happens, which it will inevitably, will that really feel all that terrible? I don't think so. I just can't believe that,
Thank you.
and losing your, it would feel like just drowning in his love. So I'm not afraid when I think of it that way.
Thank you for sharing that.
Something else too. Every time I decided maybe a couple of weeks ago, or Baba decided through me, that every time I hear the word Corona in my mind, I say his name.
Aw.
Invariably, this has helped so much, like, go away. I am with Baba, you know, and every time that thought comes, the word, just the word Corona comes, I say Meher Baba internally.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, it just
And
does
he
the
is the coronavirus too, because he's everything. Isn't that something? The mind cannot, we can't comprehend non-duality, but you know, that's who Baba is. He's the non-dual being. And thank you. Oh, beautiful, Baba. Oh. So let's do the turnaround to the opposite, because we're almost at the end here. Coronavirus endangers me. I would invite you, we can do coronavirus doesn't endanger me, but we could also do coronavirus is helping me. And see if you can find an example. That's kind of an opposite, right?
Mhm.
How can you find an example where coronavirus is helping you?
Well, I already shared all the many ways it's a gift for
Yes,
me.
and that was, thank you. I loved all your sharing. That was so beautiful. And I've heard many examples. And if anybody else has an example of how this coronavirus is helping me, please feel free to share it.
Well, Anne, I'm seeing how much resources I have inside myself. You know, that
Beautiful.
I really be happy inside myself. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
And I can actually, I feel it's taking me to the next level spiritually. You know, with all the praying I'm doing, prayer groups, doing things like this, and just being home more and in nature more. It is really a boost. It's a boost for me.
Didn't Baba say become like a football and just, you know, get kicked? It's kind of like coronavirus. We're just like the football and we're being kicked, but it's bringing us closer to him. So hooray.
He said, let your ego be like a football getting very beat up, and just be able to keep on letting go and humble yourself. Yes, that's beautiful.
Oh,
When you said
yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here and for participating. It is really, it's such a joy. And I'm going to close with a quote from Baba that's from The God Man by C.B. Purdom. And then afterwards, we can all say our goodbyes. So this is: the best way to cleanse the heart and to prepare for the stilling of the mind is to lead a normal life in the world. Living in the midst of your day-to-day duties, responsibilities, likes and dislikes becomes the very means for the purification of your heart. For the purification of your heart, leave your thoughts alone, but maintain constant vigil over your actions. Let thoughts come and go without putting them into action. It is better to feel angry sometimes rather than merely to repress anger. And I'm going to stop here and say that's when we can stop and feel the anger that we have. It's better to feel it than to repress it. Although your mind may be angry, do not let your heart know it. Remain unaffected. If you never feel angry, you will be like a stone, in which form the mind is least developed. Let the thoughts of anger, lust, and greed come and go freely without putting them into words and deeds. Then the related impressions in your mind begin to wear out and become less harmful. When you feel angry or have lustful thoughts, remember Baba at once. Let my name serve as a net around you. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Anyone want to share anything before we say goodbye?
Hey, Baba.
I
Thank
do.
Thank you, Anne.
You're
Thank you,
so
Anne.
welcome. Thank you,
Thank you
Baba.
very much.
I have
Thank you,
something.
everybody.
The image of the virus that's been mass produced and mass delivered on every possible media mainstream is not in fact what it looks like. It doesn't have red spokes. It's actually grayish. So if you do some research online, it really is not as threatening looking as they want us to buy into. So please do your research online and find out what the actual